bright. Turn it down a little bit. Ugh. Man, that lady. She gave me a hickey. What was that? Anyway.
It's the Hey, You Made Your Movie Show, hosted by Carl Diamond.
I am Carl Diamond. Welcome to the Hey, You Made Your Movie Show, the show where I talk to indie directors who recently released their debut feature film. And on today's episode, we're talking about vampires, or that's the theme of this week's episode, because I had the opportunity to speak with Jeff Sinasac, a Canadian filmmaker who recently released his debut feature film, Red Spring. I had a great time talking to Jeff. So, without further ado, here's the trailer for Jeff Sinasac's Red Spring.
There are millions of them by now, maybe billions all around the world. The food will run out for them.
There'll be nothing left to eat.
Well, what do you suggest?
A bomb shelter?
It keeps radiation and odor out.
I have to remember that the next time I'm fleeing vampires cross country.
Get anything that might be of use. Whatever we do, we're back here before dark.
They're coming.
The door's built thick, but if they want in bad enough, they can get in.
Look out!
We have to get out of here.
Sun's going down, man. We're fine by daylight. That gives us like 6 hours to find a way.
It is them and they want in. We're gonna have to do it before the sun comes up.
Jeff Sinasac. Hey, you made your movie.
We did indeed, about 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
Shot it 5 years ago, yeah.
But you got distribution pretty recently.
Yeah, we got out on a bunch of video on demand. We also had a theatrical release in Turkey, of all places. That was pretty cool and unexpected. But we released all around the globe in different countries, mostly in video on demand.
Okay, yeah. I'm just trying to picture what it'd be like to go to a theater and watch this movie.
Yeah, with perhaps Turkish subtitles, I don't know. Or actually, we've seen Hindi dubs. Like, we've seen everything. It's done in a bunch of different languages.
How do you sound in Hindi?
I wouldn't even hazard an attempt to imitate that. That'd be a license to a recipe for disaster, I think.
No, but I mean, are you happy with your dub?
I didn't watch the whole thing. I watched like a few minutes and I thought that was interesting, and moved on.
It's crazy. So how are you?
I'm doing good. Amidst this pandemic, we're myself and my wife are healthy for the moment. So we got the email today that somebody in our grocery store, or somebody who works at our grocery store, apparently has contracted the virus. So there was that seed planted of oh no. But I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of people in the city who have it. So
at a certain point, what can you do?
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Have you been being productive during the quarantine? I know everyone's like, be productive, but it's like, come on.
To some degree. I mean, I have passion projects that I've been working on for decades that this has afforded me the time to work on again. I have a video game that I've been working on for 25 years.
Oh, wow. What's that game about?
It's a roguelike about assassinating a demon. It's called Caverns of Zascasian 2. You can find it on itch.io if you look for my name, probably. Yeah, so it's a procedurally generated game. Every time you play, it's different than the last time.
Cool. I know. I love roguelikes. What was the name again?
I'll have to spell it for you. So it's Caverns of Zascasian, and that's spelled Xaskazien.
It just rolls off the tongue, man.
Yep. If I'd have had any idea, it was originally a 3-day project like 25 years ago, and then I just kept working on it for 25 years. So if I've had any idea that I would be still working on it 25 years later, I'd have given it a better title. But
so was it always going to be a roguelike?
Yeah, it was. It was completed on day 3.
At 25 years ago?
Yeah. And then I just kept expanding and adding and growing and blah, blah, blah.
Because when I think of roguelikes, I think that it's a relatively recent fad.
They began in the 80s, mostly as, this is a weird topic to be doing in this interview, but they began in the 80s mostly as like ASCII games. So usually you're like an @ symbol and there's like letters. That's not the case with Zascasian. It's graphical with, lighting and orchestral music and that. But they began as a text-based only phenomenon. And most games that people call roguelikes are not roguelikes. They're roguelites. They're akin to roguelikes, but they're not true roguelikes. To the aficionado.
You're out in Toronto, right?
Correct.
And have you always been in Toronto?
No, I grew up in Windsor, which is right across the border from Detroit, and moved here in 1995.
What was it like growing up there?
I mean, it was all right. It was all I knew, so I didn't have a lot of basis of comparison. Having moved to Toronto, I can recognize the cultural aspects that were perhaps missing from a very blue collar town. It was an automotive factory town.
Okay.
It now has a casino. It's the two industries now. The factories and casinos are the two things we have now, and strip clubs. Three things. Yeah, they're renowned for the strip clubs. That's the other claim to fame for Windsor.
I hear you, but you've frozen. There we go. So you said it's a blue collar town. What did your parents do?
My mother was an emergency room nurse. My father was in real estate. So yeah, I was there for the first 22 years of my life. Went to university there to study acting and realized that it was not viable to pursue that from Windsor unless I went to across to Detroit, and even then not really. So moved to Toronto.
So your mom's a emergency room nurse, and your dad, you said, was a
real estate agent.
Real estate agent. How did you first find out about a film?
As a pursuit, I think actually, in terms of actually, other than just as a simple viewer, I mean, I saw Star Wars was the first movie I saw, I think. To me, I came at it from the theater end, as in I was an actor in high school, and I didn't want to pursue theater. I wanted to pursue films, but that was my door into the industry, certainly.
How long were you doing theater? When did you start?
Started when I was about 16 or so with high school productions. Went to university, of course, did theater there because I was studying acting. Came to Toronto, immediately tried to get into film, but had no idea how. And so after a few years of like some really bad student films, I decided that film it wasn't really possible to pursue that. It was what I thought. I realized I was mistaken, but I thought it was not pursuable. So I settled on the fact that although I had no passion for theater, that was where I was going to have to spend my years. And there was only one day when I went to there was an old call board I used to go to called Theatre Ontario. Mm-hmm. And I would frequently go there to look for jobs, and there was no theater jobs whatsoever. And I happened to think there was a film one, so I thought I'll look at it, even though I know there'll be nothing here. And there was a guy who wanted us. It was a phone call. Make a phone call, you can be in our film. Instead of having to send in the headshot and resume. And I was poor enough at the time that that one discriminating factor, I didn't have to send in a headshot, didn't have to send in a resume, didn't have to pay for ink or pay for paper, pay for a stamp, was enough for me to say, okay, I'll try it. And I got the lead in that film, and ever since then I was hooked.
So let's talk about Red Spring, man. As I was looking on your IMDb page, I noticed that your credits go all the way back to 1997. How did we get to Red Spring? So
Red Spring began, in terms of the writing, way back in 2003. And to get you there, I think I started in 2002. I auditioned for and got cast in a feature film called Under Black Skies, which was a World War II indie feature directed by a gentleman named Tom Antos. And I was only on it for like 5 days. It was about a Canadian fighter pilot who gets shot down over Nazi-occupied France. And I was blown away by what these guys were accomplishing on no budget. Like, they built the cockpit of a Hawker Hurricane in their garage. They built a farmhouse set in their mother's basement, circa 1942 or whatever.
That's crazy.
So I was so impressed with these guys. I was like, God, when this film ends, I have to find a way to work with them again. Thinking maybe I could ask, would they ever produce somebody else's work? But before I had a chance to call them, they called me, because we were on set one day and there was a shoot where we had to leave the set. We were like an hour and a half out of town, and they realized they'd forgotten a prop. And I said, rather than drive all the way back there and get it and come back, we're going to lose the day. Give me a pen. I rewrote the scene so that you didn't need the prop, and it added a few jokes. And I guess they liked that. Like, that'll get you fired on some sets. But in this case, they ended up calling me once the film was done, being like, I loved the writing you did on set. Have you ever done any other writing? And at the time, I'd only written one feature, but I sent that over to him, and he loved it. So we tried to make that for a while. It got optioned, and I was offered what, in retrospect, was a good deal of money, but I turned it down because they wouldn't let me play the lead. So I should have taken it. So that sort of eventually petered out. And then he's like, well, what else you got? I had nothing else, but I didn't want to tell him that. So I wrote a new script, sent that to him, a new horror script. And he was like, I love this, but I like the first one better. What else you got? So I wrote a new comedy script and sent that over. And we tried to get that made for a while. And he's like, yeah, I don't think I'm really a comedy director. And he said, I want to make a World War II feature about the Polish resistance. And he gave me a script ideas for that. So I wrote him a custom-made script and sent that over. And he's like, I love this, but I want to shoot it in Poland in Polish, so we can't right now. So this is like 4 scripts I'd sent him. I'm like, I don't know, man. I thought this was my golden ticket, and I'm not sure. But one day he's like, what I really want to do is an action horror film. Do you have anything like that? And I've been lying to him this whole time that I have these backup scripts. I was writing like one a week trying to get something made. And I had nothing. But I had started that day writing a novel called Dead End. And it was supposed to be a zombie apocalypse novel. Now, at the time in 2003, zombie apocalypse movies were everywhere. But literature, there was like barely any. So I thought it was going to be a really cool and innovative idea. but he wanted a film, so I'll rewrite it as an action film, but I can't use zombies because zombie apocalypse movies are everywhere. So what if I used vampires instead? And that's how we came to the writing of Red Spring back in 2003. So we tried to get that off the ground for a while. As I said, he had produced Under Black Skies with his brother, so I was thinking that was how we're going to do it, out of his pocket, frankly. But in 2004, he gave me the call. He's like, man, Under Black Skies didn't quite make the money we thought it would. I've learned my lesson. I'm never doing a film out of pocket again. So after writing 5 scripts or whatever and sending to him, we're like back to square one. We're not making anything. So I thought that was it. In 2007, he calls me up and he started working at a visual effects house. And this visual effects house called Spin was, as I understand it, looking to expand into becoming a full production house as well. And to that end, they wanted to find some new material. They hired a guy to scour the world to find new scripts. Tom said, can I send him this script, which was then called Bloodletting? I'm like, yeah, go ahead. And I thought nothing would come of it, but he's like, I love it. I want to option it. And he offered me some money. I'm like, okay, you can have it for a year and try to get it made. Thinking, again, nothing's going to come of it, but hey, he gave me money. What do I care? And then it took off. I got a call from him and said, Lionsgate's interested. I was like, what? I don't know if you know Lionsgate. It's a Canadian film, but it's a big. I wrote this thing tailor-made to be shot for like $20,000, and he's talking about Lionsgate. I'm like, what the fuck? And then it starts taking off further from that. I get a call from him. He's like, Clive Barker has read it and wants to attach his name. And I was like, hey. What the? Like, how did this happen? I didn't even know what attach his name meant. I thought maybe he was going to rewrite it and it was me, Clive Barker's Bloodletting. So I wasn't sure I was on board, but I'm like, this is pretty cool. Then he calls me back and says, I have some bad news. So they're not going to let you play the lead. He said, you won't be allowed to play anything. As a matter of fact, they won't let you on set. But they will pay you to buy the script and you walk away and dust your hands and they can do what they want with it. I was thinking, I don't know. But he starts saying they're going to shoot it for $50 million. They're offering you 2% of the budget. So it was like $1 million for what took me 3 days to write. I'm like, okay, I'm in. I was totally sold. I thought this is my big launch. And then a few weeks later, we get the call that Clive Barker's mother is ill and he's moving back to England to take care of her. So he's out. And then Lionsgate a few weeks after says, yeah, we're done. So it just kind of languished after that until 2014. So 7 years later, this thing's not gone anywhere. Tom calls me again. And he's like, he's befriended. I don't want to say the name of this gentleman, even though if you scour the internet, you can find the association of this individual that I'm dodging mentioning. And I'm only dodging it because I don't know the full details of everything that went on behind the scenes. So I don't want to say anything misquote.
Gotcha.
But it was a very, very big Hollywood producer. Who had befriended Tom. And this producer really wanted to work with Tom and make a feature film. And said to Tom, I want to do it, but my people won't let me jump into bed with you. You're a relative unknown. He's a big YouTuber, but he's like, I can't jump into bed with just a YouTuber when I'm making Hollywood movies. But if we make a short film together, that'll be enough. That'll sell them. Maybe I can get us to make a feature. And at the time, this particular producer was really big into doing fan films based on superhero movies. So he said, let's do something based on Deadpool, which hadn't been done at the time. And Tom's like, I know just a guy to write it. He calls me up. He's like, can you write a script on Deadpool in a week? And I'm like, I don't even know who Deadpool is. I'm not a comic book guy, but of course I can do that. So I still haven't read a Deadpool comic, but I called over my friend Charles Brangan and said, tell me everything you know about Deadpool. An hour later, I got all the notes. The next day, I hand Charles a script. Said, does this sound like Deadpool? He's a big comic book guy. He's like, yeah, it's perfect. Just change the name of this intersection to Charles and Brangan, and I'll be happy. And I sent that in. And the producer loved it. He's like, yes, we can make this. And this time he's like, your friend can even play the lead because he knew me from Tom's YouTube videos. He's like, we'll fly him out to LA. We'll make him a custom suit. We'll shoot this Deadpool film. I'm like, holy shit, this is amazing. And then, of course, Ryan Reynolds announces that he's making a Deadpool movie. So that went out the window. But at that point, that huge producer said, I really like this guy's writing. What else have you got? And Tom sent him Bloodletting, which would become Red Spring. And he loved it enough to say, you guys have to make this movie. He said, I can't produce it. I want to be in it. We offered him a part. He's like, I really want to be in it. I can't produce it, but let's go with that. And that's really how the thing got made, with the understanding that if we made this and we could make any money on it, it would allow Tom to direct something with this particular producer attached. That was the gateway in.
That's a great story.
Long story.
It had ups and downs and everything. You go from Clive Barker then to like making a Deadpool. It's all a film, and it's like, oh man, all over the place. How cool, and it just goes to show how some things can get locked in production hell. Yeah,
it was 12 years between when I wrote it and when we shot it.
And so the vampire effects were pretty simple. It looked like there was black eyeshadow on them.
I don't know fully what the makeup was. We did a test makeup thing. You can find it on YouTube, actually, a test run of the makeup, which was quite different than what we ended up with. To be perfectly honest, on day 5 was our first day of dealing with the vampires, and I had to go off and supervise the installation of the bomb shelter doors. And when I came back, the vampires were made up. And this is a low-budget film. The vampires are all working for free. And it took them hours to get into the makeup. And I walked in and I saw that the makeup was not what we had agreed upon, which is not to say I didn't love it. I actually thought it looked really good, but it was not what we had agreed upon. It was very different from what we had settled on. And I thought, I've got to either say something now, which means we'll waste hours redoing the makeup, and also all of these actors who are new to our set are going to see me in the very first few moments walk in and be disgruntled and make them sit for hours through makeup again, or I can just let it go. So I don't know fully what the makeup used was. It was supposed to be originally airbrushing and a little red around the eyes. I do know on like the next day after that, we were approached and said, "Oh, we're running out of makeup," and this was like day 6 of an 18-day shoot, and I was like, "Oh shit." So we did have to start conserving like immediately. We started calling around to find more makeup if there wasn't any available, but every place said, "We can get you some in 2 weeks." And we're like, we're done shooting in 2 weeks. So it really became a matter of use whatever you have, save what you really need for the close-ups and the hero vamps, and the rest, do whatever you got to do.
I was going to say, it kind of reminds me of the old school Hollywood look of the vampires, where they're very, like, kind of like the black eyeshadow, very simplistic, kind of like anemics.
It definitely we wanted something simple, that's for sure. The only real discrepancy was I'd seen like just subtle red around the eyes as opposed to dark black, which is where we went. But yeah, it's just interesting. I've heard really diverse opinions. Like some people love the makeup and some people don't like it, but I guess that's true of any film.
And especially when you're making a B movie and you're making something that's like a particular audience is gonna love it, and there is an audience for that kind of film. I mean, look at Sci-Fi Channel; they've made an industry out of it. This film poses a lot of questions and answers a lot of them. Can vampires drive cars? Yes. The higher level ones, yes, they can use guns. But it poses a question that is never really answered, and it was bothering me the entire time. Can vampires fish?
Can they fish? I would say absolutely. Even when I was writing the novel, which I only got like 3 sentences in before I switched it to a film, even that was going to be, what if zombies retained human intelligence? So my assumption in this is the logic we worked in the Red Spring world was they have full retention of all of their human memories and knowledge. There's nothing missing. All of them can drive a car, all of them can fire a gun. It's the only question is, the ones who've been around a long time, hundreds of years, they were brought into this world and mentored and taught how to control their bloodlust, their hunger, how to plot and scheme and stay subtle and lay low. Whereas when they suddenly made this push to take over the world, there are all these vampires waking up with nobody around to teach them what to do. So they're just waking up thinking, I don't know what happened, I'm just hungry. And so the average vampire, they're 99% of them, when they see a person, are just overcome with a desire for the blood, to the point where they're like the world's worst drug addicts. So they're capable of perfect normal thought. They just can't control the urge enough to stop and make a coherent plan, unless somebody really badass comes in and reins them in, like happens in our movie, where one of them who's been around for at least 60 or 70 years. I personally think the lead vampire was converted in World War II, so I think he's like 60 or 70 years old, or 80 years old, I guess that would be.
The AK-47 wielding guy? My wife and I called him Vamp Diesel.
Vamp Diesel, yeah, I can see that. And he's a very powerful man and a very badass looking dude, even without the makeup. So, Andre Guantanamo, even his name is badass.
My gosh, that's a great actor's name. Oh my god. So essentially what's happening in the film is you have a kind of a falling of the old vampire code that don't just recklessly turn vampires. And now you have these vampires being turned left and right, and all the fears that the elder vampires had are coming true,
Yes.
Human supply is dwindling. One thing I don't think I've ever seen in an apocalyptic film before is watching home movies during the apocalypse. And so when I saw that, I was like, why are they watching some girl's ballet footage? And I thought to myself, it's like, oh man, this is like fantasizing normalcy.
Yes, yeah. I'll be honest, there is a story behind why that happened. Because originally in the script, what they sit down to watch is The Sound of Music, which I thought was one of the most beautiful but banal films that everybody's seen a million times. Everybody's bored of it, but we couldn't get the rights to it. So then we started shopping around for what can we get the rights to. And we had we were optioning maybe there's a Canadian TV show called The Littlest Hobo about a German Shepherd hero. But I thought, I don't know if Americans will get it, so maybe we won't do that. And then we were looking at The Friendly Giant, which is a kid's show. Like, I don't know if I'll do that. And then we realized we can definitely get the rights if we just make our own footage. So that's when we came up with the idea of let's just have Vicky's childhood ballet recital and have them watch that. And I think it worked out a lot better than anything else would have.
I mean, I think it would have been really surreal to see the Littlest Hobo on
screen. Yeah, are you familiar with the Littlest Hobo?
No, but I can just imagine watching it as an American viewer, going, "What, they made this little TV show for this movie?"
You got to Google Littlest Hobo. It's cheesy and wonderful from the 70s or whatever, shot on VHS or Beta or something.
It's the German Shepherd's the main character.
Yeah.
So one thing on this podcast I like to talk about are like the difficulties that come up on set and the changes from the original vision that have to be made. Can you go into some of the problems that happened on set?
There was a few in pre-production that resulted in changes. Like, I mean, very simple things. When I did write this back in 2003, I was writing it for a specific director, and his dictum to me was, do not put anything in the script that we do not have already access to for cheap or for free.
Okay.
So I wrote specifically a sailboat in the script because he owned a sailboat. I wrote a red pickup truck because he owned a red pickup truck. I wrote a bike because he owned a bike. And it was written to be shot in a cottage next to a swamp with a forest. And so all of those things make an appearance in the film. But when we ended up shooting 12 years later, we didn't have access to any of that. So that's why it ended up being at a farmhouse as a small example. It works fine. It's the same thing, but it ends up at a farmhouse instead of a cottage and little things like that. The only thing that actually made it from pre-production that I wrote into the script in terms of those props was the motorcycle. That was the exact motorcycle I wrote to be used in 2003, ended up in the film. Everything else was promptly thrown together with whatever we could find. I mentioned the change of the from Sound of Music to minor things. Like, yeah, we shot in a theater, a functioning theater for the opening scene, as opposed to it was written as a community center. But that's literally just what can you actually find access to for a set.
Absolutely.
We shot in Kincardine, which is a very small town about 2.5, 3 hours away from Toronto, where my wife grew up. So it was really a matter of whatever we can get for free there is what we'll end up using. But I think it all ended up working, so there was no regrets about what we ended up.
No, it sounds like you guys were able to adapt, which is kind of like the indie filmmaker spirit. It says you use what you have.
Yes, for sure.
And it kind of works out with vampire movies and apocalyptic movies. It's whatever's around. And sometimes it doesn't look like
scavenged.
Yeah. Exactly. It puts you in the mindset, man.
That's true.
So how did you get to Amazon Prime? How does one take a film and say, hey, I want to get this on Amazon Prime? What's that whole process like?
I literally don't know the answer to that. I can tell you our process, which was we premiered at the Blood in the Snow Festival, which is a Canadian horror festival. And there were some people from various distribution houses in the audience, and we were approached by several of them that night while Tanya and I, my wife and I, she co-produced the film. We were both like hammered and we're being approached by people offering us to buy the thing. We're like, we'll talk to you in the morning. I don't even know what you're talking about. But one of them met us for breakfast, and we ended up going with them. They're called Summer Hill Entertainment. Yeah, they handled all of that. So how we got into Amazon Prime, and like we're on a bunch of different platforms. I don't know. It's all their work. The posters, their work. The new trailers, their work. The fact that we went into all these different countries is all their work. I have nothing to do with it. We just sit back and find out the information, usually through them, occasionally through Googling and being like, oh shit, we're in India now. I didn't know that.
So really, once you met with Summer Hill, they took it and it was in their hands? Mostly.
I shouldn't say just their hands. It was also, my wife Tanya was, when I say we co-produced the opening bit, and then she really became the producer. Like, once we actually got onto set, my attention was less on producing, and that became more her thing. And certainly in post-production, she was much more the producer. So she handled all the negotiations with them. I know the negotiations went on for like a year because she had a lot of questions and she really wanted to get specific things in the contracts. But that was all her, so I'm really not privy to it.
Well, that's good that you guys took your time with the negotiations. I've heard stories where people get taken advantage of. Is there anything that I haven't brought up that you want to mention?
Do you want to talk about any like the incidents that occurred on set?
Oh, yeah. Yes, please. If you have any fun stories, go ahead and share.
We were shooting the highway chase scene where there's vampires in a pickup truck chasing a motorcycle, chasing a van. Mm-hmm. And we're shooting on a concession road. And we shot some daytime footage and then converted day to night, but we also needed a lot of nighttime footage. And so we're out in the middle of the night, it might have been like midnight or 1 a.m., back and forth on this road, roaring vehicles. We're in the back with assault weapons and this kind of thing. And all of a sudden, behind the rear car, I see the red and blue of a police, and I'm like, oh shit. Yeah. And not only are we about to get pulled over, but on top of that, we're all carrying weapons that are pure replicas of like very deadly armament. So put down the fucking guns and like everybody keep your hands well away from the weaponry. we stopped and went out to talk, and there's this very serious police woman who comes out, and she's like, we got a call about people racing up and down this road in the middle of the night. You have an explanation? And I'm like, I'm so sorry. We are a film crew. We're with a film called Red Spring. And she stopped me right there. She's like, I've read about you guys in the paper. Your producer called our station and warned us about you. You're great. Go ahead and roar up and down the street all you want. And then she took off. And I was like, okay, that would not happen in a major city. That was a small town deal. And it blew my mind that we were just allowed to continue filming with our weaponry.
That's
unrestrained
amazing.
on a street. Yeah.
Did you have permits for this film?
Yes, but when I say that, specifically those types of permits don't exist in King Garden. Like we shut down the city's main street, like literally the central street. We blocked it off with barricades to shoot one of our central scenes. When we called them about can we get permits to shoot this? They're like, what do you mean permits? We're like, well, who we talked to about getting permit? They had no idea what we're talking about. There'd never been a film shot there before, so they just basically said, you want to shut down the street? I'm like, yeah. I said, when? We told them, like, all right, we'll bring you out some barricades. Done. It was like, that's how easy it was. It was never there was never anything we had to jump through hoops for with that kind of thing. That's my one piece of advice. If you're going to shoot a film of this nature, find a good small town, because you shoot in Toronto or something like that, they're going to be all over you for, to try and get every buck they can out of you. Or someplace like that, they are just eager to help in any way they can.
Aspiring filmmakers out there, write your script and find the smallest town you can.
That is true.
They're catching on though.
Are they?
I think. I don't know. I imagine they have to catch on, because it's like, fingers crossed it lasts forever, because it's kind of wonderful to hear that the response to permits was water permits.
Yes.
Any other stories?
Our lead vampire very much always wanted to suntan. Like, so when he was off duty, he was like laying in the sun constantly. So the levels of makeup we had to start putting on him and we weren't paying anybody off. Like, we were paying a percentage of profits should such profits ever materialize. So it's not like I can be like, on your day off, get the hell inside and stop suntanning. But yeah, certainly as time went on, he became a very golden brown, and we had to start layering on the makeup thicker and thicker to try and mask that.
Was this Vamp Diesel?
Yeah, it was Vamp Diesel, yes. Andre, yes.
All right, so we're about 30 minutes, a little over 30 minutes in. Let's move on to, well, first thing, this is the first opportunity I've had a chance to do this, because I haven't interviewed someone who has a relation to a different film I talked about. You were in Android Reenactment.
Yes. Yeah, in 2008, yeah, as when we shot that, yeah.
What was your experience like with that?
It was actually very fortuitous, because I got called about that film by Daryl. He and I had worked together a little bit off and on before that, but he called to offer me that role at a time when I had just gone through, I shouldn't say a breakup, because it was actually a similar circumstance to the character in that film, who was sort of with somebody that he was wanting to be with, and it didn't work out. And we had parted company under bad terms, and I could relate to the character, let's put it that way. And on top of that, I was also stressed and looking for something to do to take my mind off it. So when I got that call, hey, can you come out of town for several months and shoot in Niagara Falls? It's like, hell's yeah, I'm there in a heartbeat. So I loved shooting that film, every second of it.
What timing, man? It's like, oh, I just went through a bad breakup. Let's go make art.
Yes, about a bad breakup.
Exactly. That's good that it worked out. Daryl's a great guy. It's good. It was a fun conversation. So, would it be safe to call you a cinephile?
I don't know if it would be. I mean, I certainly love film, but I don't know if cinephile connotes something perhaps beyond my level of passion. I tend to fixate on certain movies and be like, I like this movie, therefore I will watch it 46 times, as opposed to watching 46 separate movies,
Oh yeah, well you got to analyze it. You gotta look through every little detail, man. I totally understand you there.
You give me more credit if you think I'm analyzing. It's more just like, hey, that was fun. Let's press play again.
So for you, what is the greatest movie of all time?
It would depend on the context. I mean, one of my favorite movies always was the original Dawn of the Dead. The remake's okay, but the original was incredible. I'm also a huge lover of Jurassic Park. I think it's probably one of the best pieces of fantasy film ever made. But there's certainly things outside the genre. I loved Punch Drunk Love, loved Being John Malkovich. I thought was a very daring, very cool film. So my tastes kind of run the gamut. But I guess my purest passion remains for sci-fi and monster movies. I used to say I liked horror. I don't like horror. An old girlfriend pointed out that I hate horror, and she's right. I love monster movies. When you get into actual human on human violence, it's not. I think there's enough of that in the world that sometimes it's not to my taste. But if you can show me a monster eating somebody, I'll watch that all day. But as soon as it's a human stabbing somebody, I'm like, I've literally seen that in life. I don't need to see that again.
What should we watch after Red Spring
What can you recommend as a follow-up B movie?
And I should readily have an answer to this, and I've seen what did I just see? Train to Busan was pretty cool. I just watched that the other day. Definitely worthwhile. What did I also just? I just watched. I mean, Ready Player One. I enjoyed because I'm a huge gamer and I love '80s references and I love Spielberg. You know, it was kind of panned. Oh, I'm going to pimp another one of my films that is really popular right now, and it is in the B genre in the sense that it was made on a very shoestring budget, not in the B genre in that it looks much more higher production values, and that is Code 8.
Code 8.
Yeah, it's a sort of superhero film with Robbie Amell and Stephen Amell. I got to play not a huge role, but I was in that for about 5 days, and I loved every second of that film. It turned out really cool.
One thing with Red Spring, when did the title change?
So that particular producer that I'm refusing to name, and not for any negative reasons again, just because, frankly, because my wife asked me not to. He wanted to be involved, but he said, I think the name Bloodletting is a little on the nose. It sounds like a B movie. It sounds like a slasher flick. Although we only had the budget for B, certainly the heart of the movie is more about the humans and about the characters, so I didn't want it to sound just like about violence. So he suggested changing the title from something quite so literal, and I was walking along debating it with Jonathan Robbins, who played Carlos in the movie. He was on the phone with me, and I suddenly came up with Red Spring. I'm like, I think that's it. He's like, oh, what? But I was like, no, Red Spring, we're done.
I know it's weird because you'd think the producers would want Bloodletting, because one thing I've seen is that they change the movie if it's got a letter at the end of the alphabet, they kind of want to move it to the front of the alphabet for Redbox.
It never would have occurred to me. That's fascinating. That makes a lot of sense.
It blew my mind too.
The marketing team never changed it. They came up with a poster, which was very definitely deviates a lot from what our initial posters were, but they kept the title.
That was definitely going to be a question until you said that you had no idea.
But why it changed?
Why the vampires look the way they do on the poster versus...
That was we saw the art for the first time on the internet. We're like, oh, all right. I imagine it's because it will help sales. I mean, we had a very cool poster designed, and I love the posters we designed. I can't deny. I also, frankly, do love this poster. I don't think it represents the film to the fullest, only because our vampires are much less goonish or monstrous than they show, and frankly, none of the characters on the poster technically appear in our film. But
I thought Mitchell was on the poster, right?
It sure looks like him, but it's not him. I don't know where they got the art. Oh. It's just somebody who coincidentally looks a lot like him, front and center. Yeah.
Oh, I can imagine people who don't like B movies watching this going, "What the heck's going on?" Who aren't familiar with the whole process of that.
Yeah, I've heard a few things on the internet. And sometimes people bring that up and that they feel duped. But I mean, a lot of people don't really care. They're just like, I liked the movie anyway, so what do I care?
There are people like me who look at the negative comments, go, "Oh man, this is going to be a fun ride."
I hope that thought process is vindicated.
So where can we find the movie online?
Once again, I should have been better prepared to answer this question. Amazon Prime for sure. You can order it from Amazon in DVD format as well.
Oh, wow.
It is on YouTube Movies. It is on Vudu. My wife would know better than I do, but she's not in the room right now. Well, you can also rent it in, I think Family Video is the only real video chain that's still around. It was in all of the States and a bit of Canada. It recently left Canada. We bought the last copy off the shelf in Canada, but it is available for rent as well in any Family Video store. Oh, she's whispering through the door. Google and iTunes.
Google and iTunes. Perfect. Thank you.
iTunes, yes.
Thank you.
I guess she can hear me.
Oh, and Jeff, where can we find you online?
On Twitter, at Jeff Sinasac. On Facebook, Jeff Sinasac, actor/writer.
Okay, so are you working on any scripts right now?
My wife and I were working on a treatment for a concept she came up with. I don't want to go into too much detail about it, a horror film that she wrote the treatment, and then I was working on the script. I mean, that's been slightly put on hold as we did the move, and also slightly put on hold just because I don't know how scripts that don't acknowledge this pandemic are ever going to come to fruition in the near future. So I don't know if we have to completely remodel the concept to acknowledge the fact that we were all locked in our homes for weeks or months. I don't know. So I think I'm kind of holding off on working on that further until I know what's going to happen with the industry. I'm not sure if honestly we're going to get back to filming here. I might be a bit pessimistic, but I'm afraid it's going to be like a year or two before even TV series get back on their feeds.
I heard rumors that it's September in America.
September would be great. I'm honestly worried it might be like 2022 or something before.
Oh, jeez. Oh, don't feel my nightmares.
I'm just worried because I think there'll be the classic fall resurgence. I shouldn't say classic. This is newish, but there will be, I think, a fall resurgence, and that's going to lock everything down again. And I think also they're going to have to retool a lot of shows to have less crowds and maybe cut all extraneous characters. So there's a lot of rewrites that have to be done. So I'm fearful that this season of television will not happen at all. and then
It's gonna be weird.
Maybe in February they'll start shooting again. I don't know.
All right. Well, the director is Jeff Sinasac. The film is Red Spring. Jeff, will we see you for your next feature? Should movies survive?
Yes, I would certainly hope so. Yes.
Oh, awesome. Well, Jeff, thanks for coming on the show. It's been great talking to you.
You too. Thanks so much.
That's my interview with Jeff Sinasac. If you like what he had to say and want to check out his other work, as well as the films he recommended, I placed the links below. If you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future content we put out. Are you a filmmaker who's recently released their debut feature film? Please email me at heyyoumadeyourmovie@gmail.com and I'll check it out. Maybe even have you on the show. So for the Hey You Made Your Movie show, I'm Carl Diamond. And until next time, keep making movies. And if you're not making movies, keep watching movies and writing scripts and owning your craft and studying the arts. I can't wait to see all the films you're gonna make. First, you have to make them. I'll see you next time.